All right, 7 o'clock. So, good evening. A meeting of the Planning and Economic Development Committee was held Tuesday, May 19th, 2026 at 7 p.m. In the Aldermanic Chamber and duly noticed in 2 places, including the city's website, in accordance with the requirements of RSA 91-A.2. Can we take the roll, please, Clerk?
Alderman Sullivan.
Here.
Alderman Clee. Here. Alderman at Large Morgan is here, and Alderman Derek Tebow.
You got to call the other one too, even though.
Oh, and Alderman at Large Ben Clemens.
Even if we know. So we knew Alderman Clemens told me that he wouldn't be able to Zoom in tonight. So, all right, so we have 4. Okay.
We have quorum.
And we also have in attendance.
Sam Durfee, Planning Manager, and Alyssa O'Mara, Executive Director of Downtown Nashua Association.
Okay. Thank you. So public comment, which can only be on things that we're going to be speaking about tonight. Anybody for public comment? Oh man, nobody ever comes for public comment for this committee. It must be something about this committee. All right, discussions and/or presentations.
Downtown Nashua Association.
Okay, I'd like to recognize Alyssa O'Mara, Executive Director, and feel free if you want to come up and take a seat.
Anywhere?
Yeah, anywhere. I don't think any of these people are coming in. So welcome. I had invited you a long time ago, this term actually, and we couldn't get you in at the end of the year, so I decided to have you come in. You're still not fairly new anymore, but you haven't been here as much as maybe some predecessors. So I wanted you to come in, talk a little bit about what you do. You got a presentation I see, so we'll listen to that. Because I think the Downtown Nashua Association's changed its name now from GAD is an important part of the city, especially the downtown area. It does a lot of great things, and so I just want you to promote them. We have a new board, and I think you might touch on it, but the Pride Festival situation, hopefully, because obviously that's been in the news. So I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you.
And let me put it on the slideshow too, if I can remember how to do it.
Am I supposed to push this button?
Yeah, but I didn't.
He's got to make it a
Oh,
presentation
no, sorry, I meant on the
first.
microphone.
Yeah, I took it off a presentation because I wanted to see the
microphone?
time.
You have a microphone right there, right in front of your face.
Am I supposed to do anything with it or just talk?
No, you just talk.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool. Sorry.
It's the presentation thing on when it's on
It's usually on the
Adobe.
bottom.
Well, it's a PDF.
Yeah, that's
Oh,
right.
that's a PDF?
Yeah, that's why I'm confused.
Okay, so just get rid of the X over
Yeah,
there.
PowerPoint.
Yeah. Okay, and then she can just do it.
Oh, can she click it? Oh, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Still doesn't blow up.
I know.
All right, that's fine. You can do it.
Okay. First, thank you for having me be here.
Sure.
It was about a year ago that we met at the farmer's market and you asked if I could come over, and we've had a busy year so far, but I'm very excited. So, I guess just jumping right in, I know most of you are familiar with Great American Downtown. We're a 501c3 nonprofit. Our focus is strengthening and revitalizing downtown Nashua as a vibrant, welcoming, and economically healthy city center. Our purpose is to provide coordination, collaboration, and partnership that unify the entire Nashua community around a common vision for an attractive downtown that is vibrant, viable, and truly reflects the character of our city. Essentially, we have, I believe, become known as like the events organization for the downtown area. That was never our full mission. Our mission includes advocacy for residents and small businesses in the area, revitalization efforts for our building owners and property owners in the downtown area, and in addition to that, recruitment of new and unique businesses that will bring more people to our downtown area. So part of my taking over this position was kind of bringing us back to those roots and trying to create new programming and reestablish some relationships that perhaps were lacking previously. This is just a little about our origins. I don't want to go into tons of detail. I'm sure you're all familiar, but this iteration of our downtown organization was originally incorporated in 1986. There are some familiar names up there as far as historic people from our city. We have had downtown organizations prior to this iteration. typically goes through like a 10 to 15-year cycle, and then we dissolve and reincorporate as something new, which is what we are transitioning through at this time to become Downtown Nashua Association. Whoops. Very quickly, Board of Directors, Matt Jackson from Baird Home Solution is our president, Mike Baum from Veteran Chimney is our vice president, Kathy Donaher of Bar Harbor is the treasurer, Evan Baird from Baird Solutions is secretary, Alyssa Gager McQuaid from Purple Finch Properties, Kim McCarthy from SMMA Cambridge, Philip Sconsis Fine Jewelry, Andrew Piela, Shaheen and Gordon, Liz Hannum, City of Nashua, Lieutenant Andrew Lane from the Nashua Police Department, Michael Curran from the Nashua Fire Rescue. And recently, as of this year, we have Terry Connolly from Triangle Credit Union, Dr. Eric Cooney from Southern New Hampshire Health Systems, James Lawrence from the Masonic Building Association, Dan Splain from 84 Bravo Media, and at this time, there will most likely be 3 or 4 new board members that will be joining. Part of our goal for our first year was to grow our board out again as a civic organization. We felt it was important to have representation from as many facets of the community as possible, and we're looking to have at least a 20-person board. Additionally, we were able to hire a full-time employee in addition to myself this year, so I'm very excited. Elena Bidio joined us. She is our Director of Operations and Engagement. She has a strong public relations background, which, as you might imagine, has been helpful of late. So, oh my goodness, it's jumping. So current events and programs that we have happening. Starting this weekend, we are piggybacking on the City of Nashua's Renaissance at the Riverfront event. We'll be doing our first Rubber Duck Regatta, formerly the Duck Derby of Nashua Rotary West. They were kind enough to give us that event when they found out that there was new leadership. They knew that we were also no longer on the city budget and wanted to support in some capacity, so we're very grateful. That will be happening Saturday at 3 p.m. Sunday, May 24th, our farmers market kicks off. It will also be in Renaissance Park on the Riverwalk all summer long. That will go through mid-October. October 18th is our last Sunday. I am finalizing details right now, but we will begin offering SNAP benefits starting in June, and as long as Granite State Match kept our section for us, we will also be offering Granite State Match, which will mean that anyone with SNAP benefits will get double their benefits. $20 is $40 at our farmers market. From June 6th to June 29th, I'm very excited. Thank you all for approving the Arts Commission, granting us the funds to pay the 52 plus musicians that will be playing at the Summer Music Series and the Farmers Market this summer. So starting on June 6th through August 29th, every Saturday from 7:30 to 8:30 p.m., there will be a concert at the Pavilion Stage on the riverfront. The genre will change every single week. So we have everything from classical to jazz to pop to rock. We're pretty excited about that. June 17th, we have a double duty for our events. We'll be hosting the Taste of Downtown on that date. And in addition, we will be launching our downtown pianos. Many of you might recall this. It was we had them from 2016 to about 2019. There were pianos up and down Main Street that were painted by artists and open for the community to use whenever they wanted. I'm finalizing my funding for supplies, but I'm very excited that we are going to be partnering with the YMCA of Greater Nashua as well as PAL. And I'm waiting for confirmation, but most likely Girls Inc. will be the third organization. Each of those youth nonprofits will be doing a competition, and 4 to 5 students will be chosen to paint the pianos that will be going on Main Street this year. June 20th is the Nashua Pride Festival. That is formerly from the city. We're very excited that we were given the opportunity to take that over this year. We plan a full day of events, so starting from when our coffee shops on Main Street open through the very end of the day. Participants and attendees for the event can pick up passports from local businesses all in the 2 weeks leading up to it. If they get their passport stamped by a certain number of businesses, they'll get an additional piece of swag when they come to the Pride Festival. Additionally, we have a Find the Queens game that will be happening. So we have 3 to 5 drag queens, and we've taken some photos of different businesses that will be hosting them. And throughout the day, they will be floating from business to business. If you can catch them all and get a photo with all of them, you get an additional piece of swag at the festival. When the festival ends the festival's 2 to 7 p.m. When it ends at 7, the hope is that most people will proceed to the riverfront. We have Vices Inc. They're a LGBTQ plus band out of Portland, Maine that has quite a good following. We're very excited that they wanted to do our concert that night. So July 25th is the Summer Stroll. This is another event that we have been gifted by the city. So you'll see for both of these events, we do have some new additions. I'm pretty excited. We are going to have a roller skating rink at Summer Stroll this year. Given that the ice skating rink was so popular, we thought it would be a fun addition. And we're going to be really focusing a lot more on trying to split our vendors 50-50 as arts vendors in addition, and then the other half would be like retail and sponsors and things like that. We're working with Positive Street Art on that to try and really have a robust vendor list and a lot of people from the art community involved. September 12th, we are bringing back Coloring Main Street. This event last year, unfortunately, we had a little bit of rain, but it still was pretty well attended. People seem to love it. Main Street becomes a giant coloring book. We have artists that we hire from the community that go out and create fillable imagery up and down the sidewalks, and then all day long, families can come and use sidewalk chalk that we've left out to color those in. To be determined what week it will be, but we are planning to bring back a restaurant week to downtown in September at some point. October 13th, our downtown scarecrows will go up. October 24th will be our Main Street Monster Mash. Last year we had, we went through like $10,000 worth of candy in a very quick amount of time, and that was in addition to what the businesses purchased for themselves. So we're excited to bring that back. That will be the day that voting for the scarecrows also happens. November 24th will be Main Street Unwrapped and Festival of Trees. Smaller event last year. It was the first one. We're hoping for a bigger turnout this year and more involvement. But we wrap all of the windows of participating businesses on Main Street with window cling that is holiday inspired, and then Santa will come and unwrap those. The Festival of Trees was gifted to us by the Hunt Memorial Library building. They are no longer doing this event, and so we are doing our own spin on it. Nonprofits will be able to participate as always. The trees will be from nonprofits, and they will be partnered with a local business. And so from November 14th all the way through a week after the winter stroll, those trees will be up for people to vote and to buy raffle tickets for in a bunch of different locations downtown. November 27th, we have Plaid Friday. 28th is the winter stroll, and then third Thursdays, which is our year-round event. Music will be beginning hopefully this month, if not next month.
Just a question.
Yeah.
Or maybe even might be a comment, I don't know. I also want to mention Alderwoman Ventureflata Smith has arrived as well. So thank you. So the Pride Festival.
Yes.
I do hear that the mayor's working on actually reinstalling the Pride Parade. Is the truth to that?
That is my understanding, yes. So we are not part of that.
Okay.
Liz actually is here, not just as
Okay,
a
so it'll
board
be a
member,
city-
but also the city will be doing that parade, yes.
Okay.
I'm happy to answer any questions that anyone may have regarding that.
Yeah.
Essentially, we were given the festival portion of the full day of events. Then we were offered to take on the parade, which we were excited to take on. We had our meeting with emergency management, and based on the venue location change, it just wasn't feasible. We were given a couple of options that, to be frank, our committee felt would have been more insulting to our queer community to offer up as opposed to a parade. So the focus became, let's do a full day worth of events. Go ahead.
Oh,
No, you can
No,
talk.
yeah, you
I
can
was
finish.
getting his attention.
I'll call on her.
No problem.
No, please, keep going.
So the focus became on a full day of events. We did have a meeting with the mayor's office. They were aware, they were in support of our full day of events over a 1.5 block parade to the back of the library. We thought Holman would be more visible as well as safer. And it would allow us to alleviate some of the cost associated with this event that normally goes towards police detail, so that we could do more family-friendly activities, which we do have for this year. So
Yeah.
I am excited that the city is still doing a parade, and we have a meeting about that tomorrow. So Liz, I'm sure, can answer more questions on that.
Yeah, and I'll just say before I call on anyone, I think I want to make sure that people understand there was no malintent from anyone, whether it's the city or from you, your organization, to just wipe out the parade. That wasn't the intent, I believe. Now, I wasn't in the know, so I'm just guessing because I know the people involved, and I don't think any of them have malintent to get rid of something that's been important to people for so long. I think the intent was trying to make something bigger and better, and thought that the parade part could easily be moved out, and it just obviously is important to people, more important than I think people thought. And I think the way it was presented, hey, by the way, there's no parade. I think maybe communication could have been better from the city on that, because people were surprised by it, and then all of a sudden, nowadays, you can't say anything, you say anything, and it gets blown up on social media like right away, and people lose their minds. Like, nobody came to me and said, hey, can you talk to the mayor about this? Like, even though I was disappointed in it, because it's been something I've gone to every year, people just feel like they want to scream about it. And sometimes you just got to ask people the questions, and you just got to, talk to the people that could do something about it. And so I'm pleased that at least we're at a point now where the mayor's listening, the city's listening. We're going to try to do something that sounds good. So I'm happy about that. Alderman Klee.
Thank you. First off, thank you for allowing Ward 3 to be the host of the Pride Festival. I'm very proud that it'll be there, and thank you for that. I was at the downtown, part of the downtown improvement committee meeting at the end when you kind of mentioned that, and I found it very interesting. And if I'm misquoting you, please tell me. You said that by putting it at Holman, it kind of brought it out of the shadows rather than being behind all the buildings at the library. So for all those folks that are listening, can you reiterate what you said? I thought that was a great thing. And I think being in Holman is a focal point and not hidden behind buildings.
Thank you. Yeah, Holman and the Silver Knights are very excited to be hosting it. They view themselves as the gateway to downtown, like the first big spot. And for the current committee, who is entirely made up of queer people, by the way, with the exception of one person, we all agreed that, it's wonderful that Nashua has anything, that we had a parade and any kind of celebration was fantastic. But it did feel a little bit like, here's your 1.5 block parade, and now hide behind the library where no one can see you. And that was the feedback that we received from other people in the queer community. So by bringing it to Holman and having it on the LED sign for weeks leading up to it, and food trucks outside, and signage, and all of these things, we thought it would actually increase visibility for the event. And I do just want to clarify the communication issue. It was not a communication issue. There was one individual who called my office multiple times over the course of a week with moderately harassing phone calls because they wanted information, and didn't seem to care that we send out press releases for every event, and we have 5 events before Pride that we are working on currently. So we gave that person that information, and rather than have a conversation, that person took to social media and said that Pride was canceled and created an uproar. Lessons learned for us in that perhaps we should not have shared anything with this person, but it felt like as a member of the queer community who was concerned, we wanted them to have the information. Hopefully going forward, we'll have the time that we need to put out press releases so that all the information can be given and people can address concerns in a timely and, legitimate way.
Absolutely.
So. Yes,
Yeah.
thoughtful. Thank you. Good work.
And Mayor Donchis has always been a huge supporter of the whole festival,
Yes.
parade, everything. I always say, if you get the right person in there, or the wrong person in there, they might try to cancel everything. So I think this administration would always support Pride. So it'd be nice if people reach out to them first. I know the mayor's been away and he just got back, so that was part of it. Yeah, go ahead.
I just want to add one thing. Alderman Clemens, who's not here today, immediately contacted the mayor, as I had too, and we both were. We didn't realize that each of us had done it, and he was already on his way to trying to do something. Of course, we throw suggestions at him as always, but he was already on his way to try to do something. But to the best of my knowledge, none of the aldermen had been before it went to social media, none of the aldermen had been contacted, which was quite disheartening, because if they had contacted us, rather than making such a federal case out of everything, we would have been able to, kind of quell and see what was happening, get answers, and maybe a parade just wasn't in the cards this year, but instead of being able to do it in a gentler way and a thoughtful way. So I do want to give a call out to Alderman Clemmons, because I know that he was working very hard on it as well. So thank you.
Alderwoman Smith, you had your hand up.
Yes, and thank you. I'm sorry, mostly came running in here, but really because there's a response, getting a lot of new emails, excuse me, as a new alderperson. And one of the questions I was going to ask is that, is it possible that some new communication then can go out? Because I could just share with you, I'm not sure who the founders are or whatever, but there was definitely a lot of really, I'll say, bad press and some bad feelings and bad thoughts, whatever, no matter what the intention was, because I hear what you're saying. Sounds like the intention was to make it a larger, greater, bigger event, but unfortunately that does not seem to be how some of the members of the community have responded to this. It's actually been the exact opposite. And cause all I know is I've got a lot of emails, and it's not friendly. And I think if there's a way that we can better, hindsight is always great, but if there's a way to put out an updated communication.
Well, it's not set in stone yet, like
Right,
they still got to work through the details.
Whatever it is, updated communication regarding what's going to happen.
Yes.
And to potentially, I guess, involve some of the individuals who are historically involved. I went to the Gay Men's musical concert. Our church supports them and goes there every year. So I'm there, and I basically kind of got cornered by a lot of individuals.
Sure.
And I don't sing in the choir, but I was there, and it was all about what can you do, what can you do, and I'm just like, yeah, hi, so my first year, and I'm trying to figure out what's happening. Can you, let me know what your concerns are, et cetera. So just really wanted to put out there that there were individuals who like that they had history connected to the parade, and that something that, quote, they took ownership for, it was theirs. Whoever owned it, I don't know, but they definitely had ownership, being part of the group that started it or whatever, I don't know. I don't have all the facts. I just want to say that there are a lot of, some hurt feelings and emotions out there.
Sure.
And, when you get that doesn't necessarily mean that that's factual or truth or whatever, but when I work with my students, I would say when people talk about harassment or intentions, and how it makes that individual feel is not what you meant to do or how they feel. So I think anything that we can do to reconnect with all of those individuals who may want to or choose to be involved of the festival, and or if the parade is, brought back in whatever fashion, that would be important. So.
Absolutely. Right now, our response to everyone has been, when they are reaching out regarding the parade, has been that the mayor's office is working on that, and we ask you to be patient while they go through the details, and an announcement will come from the city as soon as we have the information available. Additionally, I've told my vendors that I will share with them as soon as I have information available. I do also just want to let everyone know that any proceeds that we have from this event over the cost are going to New Hampshire Outright's Nashua chapter that was founded last April. We have support there are over 35 local New Hampshire queer nonprofits that are involved in this organization. The New Hampshire Charitable Foundation is one of our sponsors now. So it is definitely, we understand, and again, there's only one heterosexual person on our committee, so everyone does understand the reactions, the responses, the outrage. I think that there's been a lot of commentary on whether Pride is a celebration or a protest, and our committee's perspective is, why can it not be both? So as far as a press release and timing will go, we are completely working with the city right now, and as soon as the mayor's office has a full plan of action, we will share that out to everyone that we possibly can. Promise.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I appreciate and understand that. Thank you.
Also, the Gay Men's Choir signed up to do the summer music series, so I have our Arts Commission volunteer calling them.
Great.
Can you tell me why? So I always thought the Pride Parade was not done by the city technically.
Right.
And now you've got it. Your
Sure.
organization has it. Why did the city push it over that way or give it to the downtown, National Downtown Association. And I guess, how was it set up before? Because I always used to tell people, because people would get mad and say, oh, I can't believe my tax dollars are going toward that parade. And I'm like, it's not.
It's a committee.
Liz Hannum, Economic Development Director. So the mayor's office did put on the event, but it was only paid for out of sponsorships and donations. So no general tax dollars ever went to the event. And with, potentially a new mayor in a few years, we're thinking how to protect this event from potential changes that would be disruptive. And we've always, for probably 5 years, been thinking we need to start giving this this event to an organization so that it is protected from the politics of the city. And so GAD or DNA has stepped up into that role. And originally we were just going to do the festival with them. And then when they were really excited and we thought also the parade would be great. But it is, from City Hall to Holman Stadium is almost 3 times as long as our normal parade. And so I think that, for a 30, 40-minute walk, we could get a lot of event out of the festival piece. And so that was the decision that was made. But we are working on getting it back. So listening to the community, we're gonna do the longer route.
We're making it happen.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great explanation. I appreciate you doing that, because that's how I thought it was, but trying to explain it all the time. And you said a new mayor in a couple of years. Do you know something I don't?
Yeah, right, well,
I mean, there is an election in a few years.
Alderman Clee.
Thank you. The parade originally used to start at Elm Street.
Yes.
And went all the way to the library. And then it got shortened from City Hall to that. If there is still too much length, would Renaissance Park be a good place to start, or would that just be too much chaos there?
Unfortunately, the staging of the parade, floats and cars and vehicles and things, there needs to be a large space.
Okay.
So the only other place we have kind of thought about doing it is the library parking lot, and then going onto Main Street and then up. But we're not sure how that would work yet. So that is our meeting tomorrow, is to decide the final route
Right.
and the cost of what that would be. So that's what we're still in the process of figuring out.
Just a quick follow-up. I like the idea of it going through downtown from City Hall on. I think that would be the best, but if you did have to shorten it, the nice thing about even doing it from the library, there is that Library Hill is a big viewing place where a lot of people stand. So you would still have a good amount of people that would still get to see it, as well as, through that path at the library and so on. So I still think, even if you did it from the library, it would be a good, if you had to shorten it that way, I still think it would be good. But I think truly showing our pride in coming from City Hall speaks volumes. So,
Yeah, and I
thank
think
you.
that is the mayor's preference,
Yes,
to
I
do the
think so
whole
too, yeah.
City Hall all the way up to Holman Stadium. And this year, because we weren't anticipating it, and there's only less than a month now, we will have to probably use general funds this year to cover the cost of the police detail. We're not sure what that's going to be yet, and if it's an astronomical cost, then we would probably shorten the route. But we're trying to figure out what that looks like at the moment.
Thank you.
Great, thank you, I appreciate that. Anybody have questions on this slide? All right, thank you.
Thank you. And I'm stuck now. Oh,
Maybe you have to do it.
This one, right?
there we go. Okay. So this is just another general slide about the value we bring. We create a destination downtown, increase foot traffic to local businesses, strengthen community pride and connection, provide a platform for artists, makers, and performers, and attract visitors, new residents, and investors. Since June 2025, we have removed participation fees from all GAD DNA events for local businesses in the downtown businesses. So previously, if they were a host at Taste of Downtown or the Chocolate Stroll, they had to pay a fee to participate, and we felt that was counterproductive to what we're supposed to be doing. We have been working to rebuild and build relationships with the Chamber, the city, and local media. We are currently working on a Main Street America affiliation for Nashua. Director Hannum and I attended the Main Street America conference earlier this year, just a couple months ago, and made some great connections. We advocate for the community through the Nashua Chamber, the Board of Aldermen, and the Downtown Improvement Committee. We are working to bring back the facade grant program with the City Planning Department. Scott McPhee and I have had multiple meetings now. We email pretty frequently. We're hoping that by next year that will be something we can reopen grant applications for. We are coordinating right now with the SBDC and REDC about having an open door day for each of them at the Downtown Nashua Association office for our local businesses to come and get free services. We've rebranded the organization. If you have not seen our new website, downtownnashua.org, I highly recommend you take a peek. It is very much tourism focused now. It is completely updated. We're adding to it on a daily basis, which is great. We've been very much collaborating with economic development and some of our local higher education institutions on revitalization efforts downtown. Revere University Economic Development and I took a trip to Colby College in Waterville, Maine to discuss the 10-year plan that they had that completely revitalized their downtown area. And they basically gave us a copy-paste of what they did so that we can try and mimic it here. And then just inclusion of and collaboration with local nonprofits. All of our fundraising efforts now include some local nonprofit. We are not receiving any of the funds from anything that we do, with the exception of Taste of Downtown, where this year we are actually giving funds back to the restaurant owners who are donating the food for that event so that they don't have as high a food cost. Just a quick financial snapshot. Our funding sources are event sponsorships, grants, vendor fees and program incomes, donations, and city partnerships in a non-budgetary way. So as many people know, we do get an in-kind donation for the Nashua Winter Stroll of our police and DPW for the road closures for that event. Otherwise, it is a case-by-case basis. If we need something and it works, we will reach out to the mayor's office and see if there is a possibility of some of the downtown funds that economic development has going towards something we're doing. But otherwise, we are just fingers crossed every month that we have enough money to keep going.
I have a question about the money.
Yeah.
So I know we haven't got the, you haven't presented yet at the Budget Committee, Director Hannum, for the economic development. So I haven't looked at the line item. Do we know what the line item is this year for the winter stroll? 25,000 again, or?
No.
Way more.
Liz Hannum, Economic Development Director. Last year, I believe it cost $36,000 for the event. So we had a $40,000 budget line item.
Oh, right, yeah.
And the rest of it went back into the general fund. And we will be doing $40,000 again this year for the winter stroll. And then we also put aside about $50,000 for downtown or general city events. Which used to be about that was the amount that we
50,000 was the amount,
invested as a city into the Downtown Association.
Yeah.
But we had backed off because they weren't doing a lot in previous years, but we still kind of kept it as, if you're doing an event, we can directly invest in the event, but we won't just give you $50,000 without a proof of concept or, without a result. So that's the reference, I think. We put a few $1,000s here and a few $1,000s there into different events that that DNA has done this year. But we do not have a budget line item for the Downtown Association anymore.
Okay, gotcha.
It's a lot of porta potties. Not many sponsors want to sponsor the bathrooms. So,
My name would look great on a bathroom. A lot of people would say that. So As far as like, when you do a stroll that's not the winter downtown stroll, not a stroll, just an event, and you need police there, is that the city's paying for that, or is DNA paying for that?
It depends on the event.
Okay.
And what the budget looks like, because obviously, like Renaissance on the Riverfront is considered a downtown event. That is coming out of that downtown event budget, is my understanding, which would remove it from our possible budget. So it really comes down to individual events and what we do our very best. I mean, I have no problem hoofing it. I'm walking up and down the street all day long, talking to businesses. So we do our best to cover all of our own costs, but should there be a need, I will go to the city and ask. I do want to add on that for the 26-27 year, the caveat with that budget is it has to be a new event. So if it is one that we historically have been doing, we are not eligible for funds for that. So.
Well, I appreciate the stuff you're doing, because I know that in tough times, things like this are the ones that people want to cut, because it's not as necessary as having a police force in the town or the fire department, right? But I think it's important for people to have things in their city that make them happy, and a lot of these things do that, and they're all different. So maybe someone that likes the chocolate stroll doesn't like the winter stroll, or whatever, right? So I think it's important to do different types of events, and to try to raise all that money to get as much out of it as the city is great, because obviously, like I said, your budget's probably one of the tighter ones in the city, so.
Yes, it is.
But I appreciate the work you guys do to do that, so thank you.
Thank you. This is having a real delayed, there we go. This is just a little bit about our current outreach. Our Downtowner newsletter, which goes out every Thursday, goes to about 43,000 subscribers. We have a 50% higher than industry rate for nonprofits as far as our open rates and click-throughs go, almost a 40% open rate and almost a 7% click-through, which is about 3 times the industry average. On social media, collectively, we have over 30,000 followers between our 3 pages. We recently were also given the Pride page and the Summer Stroll page from the city, so that obviously increases that number as well to almost 50,000. Our farmers market just by itself gets almost 200,000 views, 2,000 interactions, and 45,000 reach. Our website has about 33,000 visitors annually. Just the week of the winter stroll, for visitors, we have over 10,000 as far as traffic goes. And starting in June, a typo, see, I knew I would find one. In June of 2026, Vibe Map, which is a program that Director Hannum found at Main Street America last year, and we as an organization invested in a significant amount of money. They have been working with us for the last year, and fingers crossed, in June it will go live on our website. This will be a full directory and a living map of the downtown Nashua area. Every business that you can possibly think of is included on there, and people can search by family friendly, brunch, entertainment, whatever they're looking for. In addition, it is AI scraping software, and it will pull every event from social media, Google, et cetera, that is happening in the downtown area. So all of our businesses will have our events page, and then there will be a downtown happenings page where people can go, and it will list out everything that we have in the downtown or every week, which means that we don't have to copy paste from Facebook anymore. So pretty excited about that. And that's really it. It's just a pretty picture of our skyline.
Questions? Comments? Alderman Clee? Let's go to Alderman
Sullivan hasn't spoken.
Sure, why not?
Yes.
Thank you very much. Thanks for coming tonight. You had mentioned in your comment that you speak regularly to downtown businesses. I'm just curious what you're hearing and what we might be able to affect as far as change to help improve the business. Obviously, we don't control the price of gas in the chamber.
Or rent.
Or anything like that, but I would love to hear kind of what they're saying out on the street.
I mean, I think really when it comes down to it, and Director Hannum and I have done a lot of workshops between Main Street America and UNH Extension this year, and I bring that information back to our community, and what the businesses know and agree with is that right now, Nashua has all of the makings of a thriving downtown. Our Riverwalk this summer, I think is going to be instrumental for seeing a change in our downtown area. encouraging people to come downtown is really the biggest thing. They have their tried and true patrons who have been going to them for years, but it's getting people out that are new to our community, that don't have a sense of community yet. So encouraging our elected officials to share out the small micro events that they're doing. We're planning on little things. We're starting a downtown dinner series that would be like blind dates for friends. Little things like that. As far as like the bigger picture, I think that we had our listening session last summer with the aldermen, and I can tell you that the business owners are very pleased that there is a police detail back on Main Street. It's very nice, especially given that there are familiar faces. These are officers who they previously had the Main Street detail, so they're already members of the downtown community. That makes a huge difference. Otherwise, I think, supporting the request for a clean team in some capacity, and hopefully at some point, some kind of public restroom for anyone who's visiting downtown would be instrumental. The numbers don't lie. People linger longer in places that have a restroom. So if we want people to utilize our businesses, we need to have things accessible for them, including just a bathroom.
Can I have a follow-up?
Yeah, good.
There's been chatter or whatever on businesses leaving downtown. Can you speak to businesses coming into downtown? And let me say specifically
Sure.
about the old Nashua Garden building that has been vacant for months, years. What are you hearing about that? And then overall, just what new businesses are migrating downtown?
Sure. So, currently, just in the last couple of years, My Optic has gone under new ownership. Local Street Eats opened. Obviously, Fort Engage has had new ownership in the last few years. Bound Together Bookstore, the used bookstore, opened. We have Anthos and Artistry, which is like events and gifts at the top of Main Street. Mesozoic, which will be taking the Kettlehead Brewing location, will be opening midsummer. And we also have new ownership at San Fran Kitchen. I'm very excited to see that some of these Manchester restaurants are opening second locations in Nashua. I think that is a sign of what's to come. As far as the garden building goes, that has been a hot topic. One of the things that I am particularly passionate about, I do have a real estate background, and utilizing historic tax credits for revitalization of our downtown area, I think is something that we really need to start pushing for people in our community to help support. The reality is that there's no developer that's going to come in and say, like, yes, I would like to buy that building and create 3 apartments, and that will be that. It's not going to happen. We need people in our community that are willing to invest. The state of New Hampshire offers a 25% historic tax credit rebate. The federal government offers a 20%. That's 45%. If you're putting housing in your building, there's a grant program offered through the city that would allow for abatement on your taxes for the first 5 years of owning that building. There are a lot of options. In working with Scott McPhee, we identified 14 buildings that we felt would qualify for a facade grant program. We're looking at multiple different options there, from lead abatement grants to the block grant programs. And while Scott and I disagree on this, he had identified some buildings that were more at the top, bottom, and outskirts of Main Street. 121 and 123 Main Street were on the top of my list. The garden building is right there. I do know that there are a couple of individuals who have expressed interest recently when they learned about the tax credit programs in perhaps doing something with that building. So for my part, as we move through these events and hopefully are able to hire a third person at some point this year, my goal is to bring in, with the help of economic development, some people who will be able to offer workshops on these historic tax programs so that we can encourage our local community members that perhaps have the funds and the time available to reinvigorate these buildings.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Alderman Clee.
Thank you. First off, I want to say thank you for everything you're doing. I know it's a lot of undertaking, and we're seeing completely different change of this DNA, Downtown Nashua Association, from what we had seen with GAD. GAD had done a really good job at certain points, and then we kind of fell off. But I see going in a completely different direction, and I love it. I also want to add that every time, for those that are listening, I think every time we have an event, we bring more interest into Nashua. I don't know if you have the ability of being able to learn if we're bringing in new people. I know we used to do that. I see Director Hannum shaking her head. I know we used to do that with the little dots and, and so on. I would be interested in seeing something like that. Not today or anything like that, but it'd be very interested to see more people coming. Because I can tell you that I have people from all over, even outside of New Hampshire, who come to our winter stroll, people who come to restaurants within our downtown area, and not the other restaurants, that we have there, but in the downtown area, specifically for this. And I've even had people who talk to me about Renaissance Park and looking forward to concerts and different things that are there. So I really would be interested to see the larger influx of outside coming in. As you pointed out, we want to get new people here. So that I'd be really interested in if that data gets collected, either through you or Director Hannum.
Yeah, Director Hannum does share that data with us. So perhaps at the, she has it right here. Look at that, folks.
Johnny on the spot.
Liz Hannum, Economic Development Director. I do get a monthly report on tourists to our community, and that's defined as people that live more than 50 miles from the community. And so as of April 2026, we had 49,000 trips, total trips, which was the exact same as last year. We have increased our year-over-year monthly visitors from last year to 8% to 37,100. We decreased the number of total visit nights by 2%, 58,000. The top 5 locations are that they're coming from are Boston, Portland, Maine, New York, Providence, and Burlington as of right now for that month. So just to give you an idea, we have 45,000 people that have come this year so far.
Just
Yeah,
a quick
follow
You had mentioned the number of visit down, the
Visit nights.
visit nights.
So-
Could that be because of weather, or are you looking at it just for this winter, or are you looking for the whole annual?
It's just for April.
Oh, just for April?
Yeah,
Okay.
so just for April, we're down by about 2% in year over year.
Okay.
For people who stayed overnight here.
Oh, stayed overnight, okay,
Yeah.
okay, got it.
So
Yeah.
if they drove through instead of staying or
Okay.
something like that. Yeah. And we're down a little bit, actually, we're down more than that year over year, almost 4%, the average trip duration. So last year, or right now for April, we're at 1.9 nights that people are staying, so almost 2 nights. And so they were averaging about 2 nights last year at this time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So just a little bit, just to give you, but that's the placer data. So we get a monthly, and once we have the new website for economic development up and running, I will be posting these on that website monthly as well.
Good, thank you, thank you.
Alderman Morgan.
Thank you. I had a quick follow-up on the data and where people are driving in from. So does that also, I'm assuming, counts like Uber drivers, bringing people from the airport, delivery vehicles, et cetera?
It does if they live more than 50
Yeah.
miles away. So it does, yeah, so it is catching those people, but they, yes, I'm sorry, I'm just reading, making sure that I understand. It is catching delivery people if they're coming from more than 50 miles away.
So that could, in theory, be a reason why it was down last month. We could be getting less deliveries because fuel is up.
That's true.
So-
That is true.
or just people visiting because fuel is up. Yeah.
Yeah,
Thank you.
yeah.
Okay, any other questions? Alderwoman Smith?
Yes. Hi, and thank you, thank you. Could you, one of the things that was always struck me about Nashua is how family-friendly and with all the events and the activities, and that's one of the things that kind of drew me here. Can you give us an idea about what are some of the incentives for the businesses to participate in the summer stroll? I know the winter stroll is like huge. But what are some of the things that we're doing to kind of build up the summer stroll, if you can share?
So we're actually handing off that event to the DNA as well. So I'll let you, originally, we've done it as the city for 2 years now. And so originally, we were trying to bring foot traffic downtown. We were trying to have a single day of use that hopefully people would come back once they saw what was available downtown. So we kind of had grander ambitions going forward of passports and things like that you're doing for the Pride event, but I'll let you talk about what, if you have plans yet, because you got, I don't know, 8 events before that, but.
No, so as Director Hannum just mentioned, the passport, that is definitely something that we're trying to do for as many events as we can going forward. It is something we used to do for the winter stroll, and we're planning on bringing that back for that one as well. As far as the summer stroll goes, to be quite frank, I have as many modes of communication with the downtown business community as I possibly can. There are some who don't want to answer emails, but will answer a phone call. There are some who don't want to answer a phone call, but will answer a text message. And I would say about 80% will only answer if I walk in on foot during the time that they are open. So the weather is nice now. I have begun my walking up and down Main Street period of time to encourage businesses to participate. But I think that the winter stroll was our first attempt at being even more inclusive, in that on our map for that, instead of just including the vendors and the little attractions and rides that we had, we included every single business that was open that day. And we plan to do that for every event that we have going forward, so that anyone who is participating and stops by to listen to a specific band play at the summer stroll knows I can go out to lunch at these places afterwards, I can go shopping here. And we are seeing a good response from our business community. I think just there's a little bit of a new energy. They know that the city is behind them and wants them to be successful. So we do have some businesses, obviously, that are smaller, that are by appointment only, but even those businesses are signing up to do events with us. So,
Thank you.
yeah.
Alderman Clee?
I just want to make a quick comment. It's something that I want to commend Ms. Amara on. You do go knocking on all the doors, and I was, like I said, I was at that last downtown committee, and she was saying how she had sent out all the messages and people just weren't responding. So as she said, she was going to start hoofing it, which is admirable, because, sometimes we say, well, businesses should do something for themselves, but you're going above and beyond and making sure that the businesses are part of the community. So I really appreciate you doing all that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions? Okay, well, I really appreciate you coming out. I like the direction you're going to as well. I mean, the presentation itself really showcased where you're going with it, so I think you've done a good job taking it over, and, that first year is obviously learning what's going on and getting your feet grounded. So I'm excited. I've talked to Director Hannah many times about, I can't wait to walk into a restaurant and eat, and there's a placemat with all Nashua sites on it, like when I was a kid, and you can go here and there, Benson's over in Hudson, all that kind of stuff. When I see my first commercial for Nashua, I'll be very excited, so, about how great it is to come here, but, yeah, I know, right?
We'll get you one of the coloring books.
So I'm excited about what you guys are doing. I think it's important, and thank you once again for coming here and being able to showcase this for people to be able to watch it and learn a little bit about what you guys are doing. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
All right, now for the exciting part of the meeting. Thanks. Sorry, Sam.
She's a hard act to follow.
All right. Land use, I guess what's the next discussion and presentation?
Land use policy discussion.
I'll get that up. still have Matt Sullivan on. Well, that's good. All right. This is it, right?
No, that is not it.
Oh, that's.
Right division.
Hold on.
Did you put it on
You
the
did.
desktop?
He did. I just gotta bring it up. Oh, it's right down here. All right, the first one?
Yes.
Oh, so it's not on the desktop yet?
Not yet. I'll drag it on too. All right. You need this?
That would be helpful.
All right, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, members of my personally favorite committee in this city.
You say that about all the committees.
Again, I'm also shocked by the lack of public comment that we receive at these because frankly, I think that this is the most interesting topic in the city, and I swear I'm not biased. For the record, Sam Durfee, Planning Manager for the City of Nashua. It is great to be back again and again and again, doing these wonderful presentations with you all. We're getting very close, and in the past, we've had very specific topics for these meetings. We're at the point now where and I've said this before, where we are really turning to you for guidance on where we draw lines, what numbers we set. We talk about thresholds and in general, just policy guidance. Now that we've structured the code, where do we draw that line, basically? So I think with the bulk of the remaining presentations that we have until we go through the formal adoption process, we will be kind of sharpening the pencils and putting the finer points on these policy items. So it's not to say that this is necessarily duller than walking through a mock development under the new code, but this is, I think, where the rubber really meets the road, and you are making these decisions with the knowledge that we have developed together through these presentations. So I think it's important to lean on your perspectives as informed by what you know about the code already. So with that, just to summarize some of the work we've done, this will be our 11th session together. We have gone through a lot. For what it's worth, we have 14 articles in the code, many of which we've talked about specifically on individual sessions. Sometimes we've double tapped them just because they're really heavy, inclusionary zoning being one of those. In others, we've rolled multiple articles into the same presentation because of the how related they are. So just to kind of frame where we've come from, talking about where we're going with these policy discussions, we'll just roll right into it. And so with tonight, I'm going to be pausing a lot and really asking for feedback and asking you all questions. And please follow on with clarification questions or questions about scenarios of how this would come into play, anything like that. So we're going to jump right into architectural related standards.
You may have to do
Would
it
you
over
mind
there
just
because
tapping
you
for me?
touched it.
I did touch it to get the thing out of the way.
Yeah.
Oh.
There we go.
Excellent. So we have some language in the code that talks about building facades. Now, the context here is in the downtown redevelopment overlay. So think new building coming to Main Street. We have this language that says with building facades that complement the historic architecture. So the question is that language too limiting? Currently in our code, we have similar language talking about unique aesthetic, architectural, and visual amenities of individual buildings or clusters of buildings. I take a lot of that language to kind of inform what the new building should kind of look like. You know, you take cues from buildings across the street, down the street. But with building facades that complement the historic architecture, I think there's a little bit of a finer point there. So is that limiting? And I think, Alderman Tebow, if you would just click to the next slide, just this is important context. These buildings are across the street from one another. Is this a bad thing? Is this a good thing? This is kind of what we're trying to get at in terms of the direction of what we do with these standards. And I want to say, for what it is worth, both of these buildings and their facades are compliant with the standards of our code from like a fenestration percentage standpoint, height, building massing. All of these buildings can legally be built under the code, but then if we assign more character-driven standards, we would deviate away from modern architecture and come back towards more traditional
Alderman-
downtown architecture.
Alderman Clee?
Thank you. I was not thrilled with the National Center of the Arts building, but it is what it is, and it was meant to stand out. But how would what you're talking about apply when you're looking at the building, for instance, where Jaja Bell's is? That's more modern looking and so on, versus the buildings that are beside it, and then when you head more towards the bridge at Main Street, and those buildings kind of change where the piano and so on. How would you take what you just said about the historical type thing? When I'm looking at that building there, there's no historical significance of it. The building that this replaced was Alex's Shoe Store, which had two different buildings, just like this one does. It's got that 1930s building in the back, and Alex had the 1970s building. So how would your statement work with these particular type of things for the future?
Sure. So the statement being talking about how building facades need to complement the historic.
Right,
Or
that one statement that you
Sure.
had there, yeah.
Yeah. So
Would these buildings be built? How would you kind of compare, so pushing the national, that one aside, if a building were to go next to where Jaja Bell's is, which is a very kind of modern building and down going that way, so.
right. So the root of the question is, how are we defining historic architecture
Right.
and the character, right? You know, I think on balance, the buildings along Main Street more closely resemble the picture on the bottom right. There are many exceptions, however, but the articulation around the windows, you know, the fine masonry work that is incredibly expensive to replicate these days, right? You know, and we want to be a pro-development city, but we also want quality design, and we can accomplish that through form standards. But again, the question really is, how limiting do we want to be? You know, if we say, yes, you know, while both these buildings would be permissible under code, no, we don't want to limit based on historic architecture and aligning with that character. You know, we can use terms like may, should, or we say shall. You know, there's language in there that can be open to interpretation. We can guide, but not require, but we can also be very strict. For what it's worth, this part of Main Street is not in the historic district.
Right. Yeah. Once you get past the bridge, it's no longer historic district, yeah.
No, sir.
Yeah, thank you.
Alderman Sullivan?
Thank you. Can you just have carve-outs on the buildings? I mean, when you look at Main Street, I mean, I can probably think of maybe half the buildings look like that and the other half don't.
Sure.
So can you do specific carve-outs in the legislation?
How, tell me a little bit more about that.
So let's say I'm a developer and I had a bucket of money and I wanted to come in and I wanted to buy a building. Now, I wanted to buy this building in the lower right. Now, the legislation says you can't. You have to keep the architectural integrity intact, leave it alone. However, if there was another building, let's say a couple of blocks down, I'm thinking of where maybe the law firm is, it's just a brick building. And I buy that building and I want to remodel it. So I want to take it, I want to take it all the way down and rebuild it. Can I do whatever I want? Do I have to keep in the spirit of what the current building looks like, which really, again, I'm not casting dispersions here. It's really nothing special. It's a brick building. So that's what I'm asking is, in that real life example, what could happen, what couldn't happen?
So in the context of the building in the lower right, you're a developer, you want to knock it down and build new, or utilize the shell of the building and totally remodel the interior?
Well, I'm just saying, if there were legislation that didn't allow me to do that, then I would say, well, all right, then I'm not going to buy that building, I'm going to buy something else.
There is a way to do it. I haven't created it in my mind yet of how there's a way to do it. I'm sure we can come to it. There's covenants, deed restrictions, all different methods that we could utilize to protect. However, you could also make an argument that's infringement on private property rights.
Yeah.
While these buildings are assets to the community because of their historic character and the architectural contribution they're making to downtown, we don't own them.
Right, and I would want to keep a building like that intact.
I
I
think
mean,
most
we
developers
don't
would.
build things like that anymore.
Right.
We build things like the Art Center now, and that's what we do. So, it is what it is, but I think that adds character to the town. So I wouldn't want to sacrifice the character.
Mhm.
I think it adds to it.
Right.
I don't think I'm helping you, but I'm just
So-
asking if we can do a carve out.
Well, I think you're getting to why this is such a tricky question,
Sure.
right? And kind of what I'm thinking I'm hearing is that, and what I have thought as well, is that with very prescriptive language, it opens us up to challenge. Say someone really wants to do something different, and it's not bad per se. It meets code, but it's maybe not fully keeping with the historic character, but it's still a great building, great use, overall a good project. Would we want to inadvertently limit that? But then on the flip side, if we don't, do we open ourselves up to the loss of, or maybe not the loss, but the degradation of buildings and the degradation of that historic character over time? If we say something like, should or is desired, the softer language that helps to guide but not require, and then we partner that with some of the facade improvement programs and some of the other programs that were already mentioned regarding historic tax credits. There are incentives that should the city choose to utilize to support these goals, we would have the regulatory language to support that, but we would also have modern architecture standards as well, if that was what the developer wanted to do.
You're all set on Sullivan?
Yeah.
Alderman Clee?
Thank you. Being on the Historic District Commission and the Planning Board and so on, and I know that zoning in the past has come to us, and when we've had soft language has said, we don't know how to guide this, and so I don't want to do that to them. I don't want to do it to Planning Board. But the one thing that I see as being on the Historic District, it's, do you allow replicas of design? So in other words, do they force them to put shake shingles on, or can they use a composite that looks like it from a distance? I guess, so my feeling would be that if someone did buy a brick building or something like that, if the improvement was to almost bring it to look like a historical building, I would almost want to say, yeah. But if they wanted to bring it to a modern building, I used to live in Canongate, and we had the music store that was across the street that was multiple different colors and so on. And we used to, the very loud building. I would hate to see something like that come downtown. So while I don't want to be so prescriptive and so on, I would want them to almost keep the character of that particular building, unless they were going to bring it, retro it. But do you see what I'm saying? I'm gasping at words here because I'm not quite sure how to say what I'm trying to say. Is if when we think of downtowns, we always think of downtowns as old and old buildings and so on. And when we go down our downtown, and I think my colleague from Ward 9 kind of said it, you can think of like 5 or 6 different types of architect that's there. I go through Chicago, I see the same thing. I see multiple different types of architect, but it's all old. Within those strips of so on. Our downtown isn't quite like that. We have 1970s buildings, we have obviously 2020s buildings, we have different types of buildings. I would hate to see this building or the Oddfellows building or any of those buildings knocked down just because it was too costly. So I'd rather say they need to keep with the design that it is, but that they don't have to necessarily use the same product. Does that make sense? And I'm bringing that because I'm thinking of the Historical Society. I don't know why Main Street wasn't put into the Historic District, but it's not, so.
Well, I have a couple more slides on this topic.
Okay,
and-
sure.
Can I just ask? So, the National Center for the Arts obviously got approved before I was on the board. I thought I had read that it was going to, because that was the old Miller's building before Alex's Shoe Stores, and I thought it was going to, have some of the brick facade there, and then it, for whatever reason, I guess it didn't. But cost, yeah.
Yeah.
But I love these old buildings. I was in Portland this weekend, and I'm just looking around. Every time I see a brick building, I'm looking for the 1850 or 1920 on it, and what it's called. Because back then you named the building, the Whiting Building or whatever, the Oddfellows Building. And so I love those old buildings. I think it makes characters in these towns, in these cities, right? It shows part of the old Nashua mixed in with some of the new. But then you see a building, and I'm sorry, I'm going to say it too, where the Jordan's Leather used to be, luggage. The place is awful. It's just this white brick square. And so it's like, that doesn't fit into anything, modern or old. It's just in the way. And I know there's been fires, and then they build and they don't replace what, 20 years ago, 50 years ago, whatever, 100 years ago, they don't replace what was there before. But I would, I like to keep some of that, but I get it. It's expensive. Nobody builds like that for that reason. And so I have a hard time, like, when I go through other towns and cities, whether it's a small town or whether it's a bigger city, I see brick buildings on their main street, whether it's called Main Street or Elm Street or whatever. And what do other cities do when it comes to deciding whether to put something more modern or put something, keep something like this? Because they all must have the same struggle with it as we do. So if you explored some of that, what have they got in their language? Is it prescriptive? Is it restrictive? Is it should, may, that kind of stuff?
So before I came to Nashua, I worked for the city of Concord, New Hampshire. Fantastic Main Street. And multiple new buildings on Main Street with brick facades. So this is a fantastic segue into
You're welcome.
materials. So it's not necessarily, so architecture can be kind of hard to wrap your head around. It's so many different things. Let's focus on materials a little bit, because that can help kind of narrow the conversation.
That was the point I was trying to make. I just jumped, I guess.
No, it's very helpful in segueing along. So the following slide has a better example, and it's specific to EFIS. So EFIS, if you're not familiar, is kind of a stucco-esque looking finish. It is not a building material in the traditional sense that you would see like siding. It's actually a system. So actually, it's an acronym which stands for Exterior Insulation and Finish System. That is important because it is a building system, much like an HVAC system, and there is a depreciation schedule associated with it. So there's some economic reasons and tax reasons why people use EFIS. However, it's not always the most attractive. There are significant issues with it. If it's not installed properly, water can get trapped behind it. It does not drain. There's some problems, but also it's energy efficient. It's exterior insulation. There's pros and cons to it for sure. We currently allow it, which this is quite interesting. This is a fun little issue with our code, I think. We allow it in the downtown districts, but when we talk about non-residential building materials, think kind of strip development out in Amherst Street or Daniel Webster Highway, we call for brick, wood, sandstone, concrete block, native masonry, or similar. We grant a waiver to this at the planning board every single time we have new strip development, because it just, there is no existing pattern of that on these commercial corridors. So while our ordinance calls for EFS downtown, but does not permit it where it's actually appearing, you know, the reality and regulations are reversed. So I think to bring it back to more reflective of what we have, would EFS be an appropriate material in the downtown context? And I think it's also important to throw on another little bit of nuance here when it comes to use. So we see EFS typically in commercial buildings, usually box buildings, you know, large scale strip commercial buildings, not so much in a mixed use or residential context. Maybe as a material that breaks up a larger material that makeup of a certain facade as a, you know, a trim piece or something else just to add visual interest to it, but it is not the primary material in the majority of buildings in a residential or a mixed use context. So the question is EFS something that we want to allow in the downtown, or to achieve the look and feel and the character that I'm hearing, is that something we want to exclude from downtown? And these are some design guidelines that we could kind of regulate on a district by district basis, because we've been very detailed with our mapping of districts as a way of capturing and organizing character. This could then follow that.
Alderman Clee.
I guess I don't have a problem with it, because the cost of everything is so high. And we want to encourage building here. The only problem I see is if, in fact, this, as long as it meets all fire codes and everything else like that, if there's a potential of there being water behind it and so on, that's on the owner of the building and the developer. That is not an issue of the city. My concern is how it looks, how it will sustain, and I'll bring up the historic district. You know, well, I want to see every house in the historic district maintain, you know, those cedar shingles and everything. I also look at buildings that haven't been maintained because of the high cost of maintenance of certain things. And if there's a material that looks, feels, kind of, you know, gives that thing, I'm more willing to go to something like that. And I'm not saying that I will or won't, but you just kind of have that feeling of it. We need to help people build. Cost is getting so outrageous. Is this material, I assume this material is much cheaper than these other materials that we're talking, this EFS material is cheaper.
I would say, given the amount that we see it.
Yeah, and I know that the thing is that we're giving it on hardship and we're giving it on permission on it because we're saying that the cost, and we want to encourage the building, so we're already approving it. To build it into the code, I think, would be the logical thing, as long as, you know, it meets all the other criteria. It's still going to meet all the fire code and everything else like that, the materials, so, yeah.
I mean, I don't love it, but, I mean, what's the viewpoint of the planning department?
Sure. So we looked at downtown. There's not a lot of examples of EFS right on Main Street. And I think it absolutely has utility as a building material. I think where we want to preserve historic character, its utility is not outweighed by the cost. And the need to have that character preserved through brick veneer is a great way to do it. Which also can have insulation behind it. There are other ways to do that, and if someone is seeking to do a significant project, invest significant money on, you know, a highly visible piece of real estate in the downtown, I would hope that they are planning to make it an attractive building. And now with standards that support that goal, we can be explicit around building materials. This is not unusual. There are communities, Concord had design guidelines, they had an architecture design review committee, very high level of review associated with anything that was a site plan or even signs. We don't go that far, but creating, and this was something, we did a very similar presentation to the planning board not long ago, the idea of design guidelines, kind of a manual of how to do good design on downtown, where it was clearly articulated by the city that this is an area where we expect higher architectural standards. We could do something similar.
Yeah, I would, if we get a historical commission in the city, we could protect maybe some sites outside of the historic district. And
Yes.
I don't know, maybe we'll talk to Director Sullivan about that. I don't know if he's heard that before, but
Once or twice.
Alderman Clee?
Just one quick thing, and I agree. I'd like to see more buildings within the city outside of the historic district, and we did at one point have something similar to that. The question that I have, and again, I refer to it as the historic district. We'd love to see more of our buildings end up on a historical registry and everything else like that. Once we put these fake facades or these EFIS and so on, that ruins any possibility, does it not, of becoming or?
I could not speak to that level of
Okay,
detail.
okay. That's my only concern is, it's a feather in a cap if you have buildings in the within the National Historical Registry, and so on. And that would be my only concern about, are we kind of shooting ourselves in the foot with that? But then again, we don't say what they can do on the inside, and that will affect it as well, so,
We need Mr. McPhee here to answer that.
yeah. Thank you.
So, EFIS in the downtown, what do we think?
I'm at the point, I don't have a problem with
I
it.
was like, so not my area of expertise, but as I was listening to your description regarding EFS, all I kept thinking was that I wouldn't even want us to have the language should, because I'm thinking about, oh my God, no, that looks horrible. That looks not too
So
bad.
I just wanted to provide
Yeah,
some
right.
photos of EFIS
Right.
in the city.
Yeah, I'm thinking if we're wanting to somewhat preserve the look that we have, that I'd much rather have us use a better quality, because I'm always thinking about, structural integrity, and, the longevity of the building or the facility. And when you say facade, I'm always thinking about just that front facing whatever. But we actually want to think, like you're saying, beyond that. And hopefully what we would want to do is encourage the buyer, because once again, we wouldn't own the building, but maybe there's some tax incentives for encouraging someone to maintain a certain level of, structural integrity and to, buy into the look that we're wanting to have for the city. So I would be concerned about this sort of EFS look, because that would completely, it could completely change, what our downtown community looks like. I know that, if I'm buying something, I'm buying it, and you can't really tell me what to do. But I'm thinking if there's some incentives and encouragements and even, some information regarding why using one material is a little better than the other, and for individuals to think about, about that. I think that's something something a little stronger than should, because should doesn't mean I have to, but, if there's some sort of minimum code standards or requirements, I think that's something we might want to consider, while we're rewriting and revisiting things, because other than that, we could end up with something, I hate to use the language, but an eyesore, yeah. So I'm not a big fan of the EPIS, so.
Thank you.
Alderman Sullivan?
What could go right and what could go wrong with the EFS?
Sure. So if it's maintained well, it's a high-performing building finish in terms of building performance, insulation, energy efficiency. It is cost-effective, and It does have that stucco look, which, again, maintained well. It can be attractive when paired with, the right color schemes and other materials. What could go not well is if it's not maintained, and it does damage fairly easily. It stains, it scuffs, it dents fairly easily. I think less about the performance of the material itself, but more the aesthetics of it in a downtown context. I think that if we were talking about the character and that being an asset, to dilute that with a material that's not very present right now, but then to allow it or not have very stringent design guidelines, it could dilute the historic character and the value, that aesthetic value that we place on the downtown.
I mean, the only feedback that I have is, especially when it comes to downtown, I think it's got to be, I mean, I like the word should, that's fine, but you talked about architectural review and things like that. I mean, I think for that specific part of town, it's got to, I think it's got to go through architectural review.
Okay.
I mean, this is exit 6, I would assume, that's the
Yes.
National Mall.
Yes.
So that, I mean, that is just an uninspired building right there. And that is not a knock against Hannaford, that's a fantastic supermarket. But the building is vanilla. And
Well,
we
it's-
don't want that in downtown. So for me, what could go wrong? It could look like just Vanilla Town, USA, and I wouldn't want that. I wouldn't want that.
So there's clearly a connection between location and
For sure.
building design.
Absolutely.
So it sounds like, in something that we could do, say we adopt the code, we can kind of leave a little breadcrumb trail and then develop very explicit downtown design guidelines that are bounded by certain districts. We could create a new district to be very explicit about this is where these apply. And that could be developed in concert with the Historic District Commission. We could have people who have experience and a high level of interest, buy-in to help develop these standards, which then would complement the structure of the code, the form-based code, but then have these apply to the areas of the city where we most value that aesthetic appearance. But we recognize as well, by not applying these everywhere, EFS has a role, it serves a function, but just, we highly value the aesthetics of the downtown.
Alderman Cleat?
Thank you. Maybe I'm getting confused about EFS. I mean, when I see this, I get chills down my spine. I don't want to see anything like that downtown. Not that we don't have something similar downtown, but I thought even the brick facade, you know what I'm talking
veneer.
about? Brick veneer. I thought that fell within EFS, no?
Well, so I think we should be talking more about like what is on the surface, right?
Right.
So it actually is a brick veneer. I mean,
Right.
it's not a brick.
No,
that's
it's just
structural.
thin brick, because I have that on my house.
Yeah.
On the lower portion of my house
Right.
is the brick veneer. So I understand, it's not bricks, it's just that little thin,
Right.
and that too, if you try to drill into it, is more likely to crack and break because it's only this thick and so on. So the brick veneer does not fall within the EFS?
No, it would not.
Okay. So I was confusing myself then. So the EFS is just basically the concrete with a design stucco?
It's like the stucco.
Right, okay. So yes, no, I would not want to see that downtown, yeah.
Well, I think I have enough to go on with that.
Okay.
Okay, and we can now jump to more of a use conversation. Self-storage is a hot planning use topic for a number of reasons. It's not the most inspired land use. Usually taking the appearance of just prefab metal buildings, rows and rows and rows of those with just drive aisles, landscaping. It's not the highest and best use. On the flip side, though, very, very low service demand. Does not generate a lot of taxes, but also does not generate a lot of service demand. So on balance, it is probably a net revenue generator, which that is worth something. Currently, we require some significant screening in the general business and the highway business district for this sort of a use, and also additional buffering when abutting residential uses. I think our code nods to the not so aesthetically pleasing nature of this use by having those standards. We do permit it in our industrial districts. So the question, you may have seen, if you're driving up 93, I believe it's in Londonderry, Bluebird Storage. This is a multi-story self-storage.
We have it in the city, too.
I believe we do, yeah.
Yeah.
And so there's a self-storage facility, but in a very different form with windows. So this is where form and function, the lines kind of blur, and we can take a different view of a use. So the question is, how do we want to allow self-storage? Is it a permitted use, standalone, it can just be self-storage? Do we want it in the metal buildings in the rows? Do we want it more in a vertical orientation? Or does it need to have other uses on the site as well?
Alderman Clee.
Thank you. We have two different types. I used the one that was over by the Marriott. I don't know if that's a Bluebird but that is a self-sustaining building with lock and so on. You need a key code to get into it, to get to your unit, which is all within inside the building. I find that pleasant. It's air conditioned and so on. The other buildings, while I find them not great to look at, also have been used for storage. And I don't know if it's permitted or not, but I know people who have stored motorcycles there, who wintered them in these type of the buildings, even boats and things like that. Again, I don't know whether or not that's permitted. So I do see a true usage for either one of those. I would prefer anything new coming into the city that would have that building shape, because it's just pleasant to look at. When you go over to where the market basket is, just as you're getting to Merrimack, and you see those U-Haul and that type of thing there, it's unpleasant to look at. But it's not on the main road. It's kind of off the. But when I also look at how big a footprint it has, I think of so much more that could be built there. So that's why I prefer the building, but I'd like to hear what my colleagues have to say.
Yeah, Alderman Morgan.
Thank you. And there is a third type to which you alluded to, is the mixed-use building, right? Many people may not know One Chestnut Street is that. So they have floors of storage, but then there's plenty of other small businesses of all different kinds that are in that building. And then they have a shared freight elevator that they use. From both sides, from just driving by visually from a land use, I think that's fantastic. From a services side, think UPS, FedEx, all of that, sharing the loading docks is very obnoxious, and everyone has complaints about it. So whether or not a developer or whatever to actually choose to go that route because of those headaches that come along with it, that is my first choice, and then the second would be the building as well.
Yeah, it's interesting. I didn't even know that was there until a couple of years ago, and I had to help get some storage out of there, and I was like, whoa, this building is... I didn't love the building. I mean, it's nice that it's mixed use, but I don't know, I didn't think the building was that aesthetically pleasing. It was right in the middle, right off West Pearl Street there, the Oval. I've used Riverside Storage, which is out of the way. You can go by on the highway and you see a FW Webb or whatever, and Riverside's in the back there, right, not too far from the high school. That's not a good-looking building, but it's not in really sight. It's behind everything. So I don't know. I mean, I don't know if I really have an opinion. I know the ones that you're talking about, the U-Haul ones, they're out of sight for the most part, unless you go to Market Basket, or if you go down to the Y back there or whatever, obviously you can see them. I don't know. I don't know if I really have an opinion on standalone storage. So when you say continue to allow as a principal use, require higher level, I mean, I'd find just letting it be as principal use, but again, I don't have a strong enough opinion that I can't be swayed into something else on that.
And we can still apply the same standards that we have right now with buffering and that, if that's desirable.
Man.
Alderman Clee?
Yeah, I would hate to see, I would have less issues seeing a full building in a semi-residential area, like if I'm thinking about on Amherst Street or so on, where would they have those residential areas? I wouldn't have as much of a problem seeing those there, but I would have an issue seeing those U-Haul, the individuals where you just kind of like open up the top and you drive in, so to speak. And I see the appropriate use for those. I've known people that have used those, many times. They're less expensive because they're not air conditioned, they flood, use at your own risk kind of thing. But just the sightliness of it, you would just prefer a building. But again, what, may I ask, you know a lot about what are other communities doing nowadays? Are they just kind of allowing both, or?
It runs the whole gamut. You go to a town that, this is top of the line economic development for them, that's what it is.
Right.
But you go to a Portsmouth, a Dover, a Concord, they have higher standards for these things. We get calls a lot about these. There's a huge demand for this sort of a business. We don't have a ton of space. These do take up a lot of space.
Right.
I think there is a level of kind of self-selection just because of what's available and what the market demands, is that, we may see one form more than the other. But perhaps we should be planning rather than reacting from a regulatory perspective to say, hey, look, we know that this is a desirable use, there's need for it in the city, but we would like to see it in this form in these districts, but this form is acceptable in these districts.
You said less tax revenue though on these, right? Than normal.
Well, no, I was saying from a service perspective,
okay.
Right.
Same thing for
Fire,
building.
water, sewer, police, there's not a lot of people there other than just coming and going with their stuff. So,
Right.
from a multifamily perspective, it's not generating as much because it's a lower level intensity in development, but it's also has high of demand on services.
Right. Alderman Clee?
Yeah, so kind of keeping with what I had said, and now I'm thinking of the Building 19 location off of Amherst Street. That one there, where I would hate to see those buildings suddenly pop up there. Even though they're far enough off the road, you can still see them and so on. It would take that area down many, many notches. But to see a building, whether it be like the one place here or the one that's over behind Dartmouth and over by the Marriott there, I mean, those would be aesthetically pleasing. There'd be a lot of, parking and so on. But to suddenly see all those little shed type things there, that would just take away from it. So again, I think we have to be very, very, if we leave those in, there has to be a lot of structure that says you basically can't see it from the main streets, such as like Amherst Street, Main Street, or I wouldn't even want to see it from the highway, to be honest with you. I wouldn't want to see it as I'm driving down, that people see these as they're plowing through Nashua, even on a highway. They would have to be very, very constructed in such a way that they're hidden.
Which then would probably be expensive. I
Pardon?
think. Which would probably then be expensive because they'd have to do something different than just putting a slab with a door on it.
Well,
I'm guessing.
I'm just saying is like, so the one that we know that's over by Market Basket there, that's not seen unless you go down that road, and because there's that little shopping plaza that kind of blocks
Right.
that and so on. But if that shopping plaza went away, you would see them as you drove by.
Yep.
So again, I don't find them aesthetically pleasing, and but there's a need for them. I get it.
Anybody else?
Thank you. That's very helpful direction. I want to talk about residential now. So we have a whole bunch of residential uses. It's a little bit chaotic in our code. And we're taking an approach now, we'd like to simplify them into household living, group living with care. I have a table. Oh, this is what we're doing in the code in terms of use structure. Currently, we have 293 individual uses in our code. we want to simplify those. A lot of those are very related, right? So if we can simplify them into 12 use classes, so like retail sales, there's a lot of things that would fall under that bucket. Then we would have little categories under that, but then also individual uses that really need to be regulated differently. Then, so I think on the right side, you kind of see the breakdown. So in your industrial categories, that's the class of the category or the class of the use. Then you have the categories within that. But then when we need to call something out to regulate it differently than that parent category, we do that, and those would be individual uses. So this is kind of the hierarchy of use structure in the new code. So with that in mind, this is a table of residential uses in our current code, and I've color-coded them into how they would fall into the 3 housing categories. This is important because we're going form-based, right? So detached single family, that is very clearly a form. That is a house, one house on a lot. We do have duplex and triplex buildings as building types in the new code, so that's no longer a use, it's a building type, it's a form. Well, what's the use? It's just household living. And we use household living very specifically. Those words really mean something. Even in our code, we refer to household living as a group of individuals living together as a family unit. We cannot say family. We cannot say related by blood marriage. There are many ADA and fair housing implications here that we have to be very sensitive to. So our research, our experience around those issues have informed this classification of our housing types into these 3 categories. I'd be happy to discuss this.
Alderman Morgan.
The one I'm having a hard time with is sober living homes.
Yes. The trickiest one.
Because really, it's group living with services.
Not necessarily.
Not for all.
I'll tell you why. We have instances where these sober living homes, they don't receive services on site. They are simply people living together, going through an experience, a life change, and the co-living arrangement, it makes it affordable, but you also have people who are the support network themselves. They're all kind of watching out for each other, they're all leaning on each other, trying to get to that new stage in life. Now, if there are services being provided, that is a halfway house. There's treatment occurring, that is in our code right now. That is a very explicit difference. So sober living with no treatment is household living. Sober living with treatment would be a halfway house, and that would be group living with services.
Okay.
Okay with that? Alderman Sullivan?
Thank you. To that point, I mean, if it were up to me, I'd put the sober living into the, is that purple? In the purple category, in the group living. I mean, it's a shared facility, that's how I see it. It's just my opinion, putting it in there. To my other point on the previous subject about the buildings, I'm in favor of simplifying things, but does that open us up to loopholes? And what could go right and what could go wrong if we adopted this?
Tell me a little bit about these loopholes.
I don't know. I mean, I've watched plenty of planning board meetings, and they hire lawyers, and this is what lawyers do. They find a little loophole, and they kind of rework their way around the code. So if we try to simplify things, does that open us up to loopholes? And then in 5 years, I'm walking by a house with my dogs, and I went, boy, how'd that get there?
What do you see when you're walking?
I don't know.
Okay.
I'm asking you, what
Fair
could
enough.
go right and what could go wrong? How could it affect the character of a Nashua neighborhood if we do this like this?
All right, so character of neighborhoods, primarily defined by the buildings on the lots and how those lots in buildings relate to the street, right? I think that's the first thing that you see. That's the visual cue of character. So we're regulating that character through our building types. We've done sessions on those. We're happy to do more. But we have taken those building types directly from the patterns that we've observed in the city. We have measured windows. We've measured building lengths. Basically, we have quantified the qualitative look and feel of building types that already exist in Nashua so that we can replicate them, not cookie cutter, but here is your general guidance of how you build a house. And then we say, here are the districts. We say these building types are appropriate for this district because that is a pattern that already exists. We are coding for what is on the ground, redrawing districts to reflect existing patterns, and then being able to replicate those patterns. So that's how we capture the visual character. Now, those buildings, we have 28 building types or so in the code. On the residential side, you know, you have a number of what would be single-family homes ranging from cottage up to large house, defined by stories, massing, general footprint, architectural attachments, porches and whatnot. You know, duplex, triplex, and multiplex, those are larger footprints. Those clearly have, you know, multiple entrances, things that would also be visual cues of character to help kind of relate and define that use. Then you get into, say, apartment buildings, small apartment buildings, but clearly buildings that are so large they look like multi-tenant buildings. Now, from a character standpoint, we have observed patterns in districts and crafted the districts to make sure that like goes with like, right? So like in R30 residential, 30,000 square foot lots, you're not going to see small apartment buildings. You probably won't even see a duplex. Those are largely single-family homes. But those homes may range in size, so we have a number of different single-family home building types that would replicate, and you know, that way you can have a variety of single-family neighborhoods, and they don't all look the same. From a household living and a group living, how do we put those into that form conversation? That's where we begin talking about the form and function relationship. That's why we have form standards, but that's also why we have a use table. Now, a lot of times, the presence of household living, and group living with services makes its appearance in the use table, and we can pull that up. We can have a conversation about where those things all go. But it's about the character, right? Now, it's not only about the character of the building in which these uses appear, but like, what does this mean now with X number of people in a building? How many cars is that? How does that relate with, you know, the capacity of the lot to contain the cars? Are they parking on the front lawn? Are they all stacking in the driveway? Are they parking on the street at night? That's not legal in most streets in Nashua. So then we have supplemental use standards that also regulate those specific things. So you could have a sober living home with 12 people living in it in a single-family building type, because that single-family building is large enough to accommodate those per, you know, the occupancy regulations. That's fine, but you only get 4 parking spaces in the driveway, so you have to make that work with that use. And if you don't, there's enforcement, but there's also, this is a conversation that happens before the use gets established, hopefully. But we have ways of checking both the appearance and the function, and the two of those together would hopefully be the way that we mitigate against unintended consequences, these loopholes, the things that don't work with the code. But by checking, again, the appearance of the building, but then the function of the use, that is fairly all-encompassing, but we always get surprises.
Can I just follow up?
Yeah.
I mean, that example that you just used about 12 people living in a home, and you say, well, you're only allowed 4 cars. So then the real world happens.
Right.
Okay? And then it falls on the residents to police it. And then the email comes to the ward alderman to say, hey, 123 ABC Street has 14 cars, 7 of them are parked on the front lawn.
Yeah.
And then it falls upon the residents and then code enforcement. And, I mean, that stuff is happening now.
It is, yes.
And that to me is, I mean, those are the things, when I walk around a neighborhood and I go, oh, how did that happen? You think, well, it just happens. That's just what happens. So I guess what I'm trying to say is, how do we catch it at the front door? How do we get it, how do we gate it so we don't have those issues later on? And say, look, you're allowed 4 cars, that's it, So,
I wish I had an answer that basically would make everyone follow the rules. I mean, that's the problem. Our code, while not perfect right now, you know, it should be catching these things. People don't read the code. People don't get building permits. They just go through and they do whatever they want. And we do rely on the residents to report problems. We have a small staff. This is a city of 90,000 people. It's very hard to have eyes on absolutely everything. But we have a system for that. You all represent your constituents. You hear their concerns. We act on them through code enforcement. Now, what I think that this system does with this new code, I think it clarifies things. It sets very clear, hey, you want to do X, Y, and Z? Well, this is the process. We have that now. It might be a little bit more confusing for some of these more sensitive use cases. But if they're not going to read the code, they're not going to call City Hall, they're not going to ask the questions, they're not going to bother with the building permit, we can't regulate a problem or an individual who doesn't care what the regulations say.
fair point.
Before I go to Alderman Clee, I just wanted to go back to something Alderman Sullivan said, because it wasn't touched on. So the sober living homes, so it isn't obviously with services, but why isn't it in the purple?
Because they are operating as a family unit.
Right.
And this is a fair housing thing. You may recall, 16 Archery.
Yeah.
We went through the ringer with
Yep.
ADA and fair housing, and we learned a painful lesson. And that is why it is in yellow.
Yeah.
Okay, I don't agree with that either, but Alderman Clee.
Yeah, I know. I have a couple of questions. First off, I'm going to start with the multifamily 4 or more units. When we hit 5 units, it becomes a commercial property, does it not? It becomes like almost an apartment building, even if it doesn't look like a little square apartment building.
The use is residential.
The use is residential,
The use is residential.
but it's treated differently once it hits 5 units,
From a
right?
building code perspective, I believe so, not from a land use code perspective.
Okay. It's disheartening, but
Well, if I can
sure,
pull on
please,
that a
yeah.
little bit, but what's being missed? What issue does that pose?
Well, okay, I'm going to go back to things I've seen on planning and things I'm seeing in the historic district, where someone can take a home and turn it into 5 units or 4 units. There was always a different feel, you know, and I know certain developers are waiting to see what we're going to do as far as 4 units, 5 units, whether it becomes almost like a by right type thing. That's one of my concerns. The other thing is to answer to my colleague, the problem that I see that is imposed on us is the parking, where when we look at a sober home, that is considered 1 unit. We can't force them to have 4 parking spaces anymore, right? Doesn't the state say 1 parking space per unit?
They have their driveway to park in. They can fit as many cars as they want in their
Right,
driveway.
but if we know there's going to be 12 beds there and Sober Liver comes to us and said we're going to have 12 there, we can't force them to have any more than 1 parking space. Is that
So-
correct?
Correct, but let me ask you this.
Yep.
If a sober home is coming into a residential neighborhood, what residence in a typical residential neighborhood has a 12-car parking lot? That would be out of character with the
Right,
neighborhood.
right. So I'm thinking of a particular property, so that could have 12 parking spaces. But what I do see, and I see it in my ward a lot, is people parking on the grass, on the lawn. And I actually ran across a property that has no driveway. I just learned about this one, and I've been speaking to Director Sullivan about this particular property, trying to get them a parking space in front of their place, because on Summer Street, they have no driveway, none. For some reason, when the land was split, there was no driveway. They've been parking on, they've actually been putting ramps to go over the curb to park on the grass and so on. So this is becoming an issue. I see this more and more. So that's why driveways and parking is very, very close to me. So when I see a multifamily, 4 or more units, if we can't force them to have, they take a house. I'll take a house on Concord Street. One of these big houses that they could turn it into 5 or 6 units. They may have enough parking space for 5 or 6, but I just see by putting this into household living, 4 or more, we're changing their ability. It almost becomes a by right, and maybe I'm just misinterpreting it.
No, I think you make a good point. So a large house, this gets to how we calculate density as well. A very large house, say 6,000 square feet,
Right.
on Concord Street.
Yeah. I'm thinking of one that's over 8,000 square feet, so yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
So a landlord buys that and pays a very large sum of money for that, and to recoup the investment, says, I need to cut this building up into apartments. So we're regulating density no longer on a units per acre standpoint, but a units per number of square foot
Right.
footage in a building. So if we take, well, for simple terms, we'll just say the density factor is 1,000 square feet. So a 6,000 square foot house could have 6 units.
Right.
Simple calculation. That density factor does get modified based on lot size, though. So if that lot is less than 5,000 square feet, it's actually a 1,500 square foot density factor. We have that modifier in
Okay.
place so that smaller lots, while they may have a large house, there's a clear issue where if the house is taking up the bulk of the area, they clearly can't park cars. There's all the other things of space that people need that's outside of the building.
Okay.
So that we have that modifier. So instead of 6 units, it's 4 units if it's on a smaller lot.
Okay, so the lot size would kick in, it would kick in as to how much square footage per unit would be on that. Okay, that's good. The next one I'm going to bring up, I think, is really a moot point, but I want to bring it up anyways. What the state did to us with the bringing of those 200 individuals back to the state of New Hampshire, buying homes.
Oh, yes.
Yes, buying homes, putting multiple people in it that are getting treatment, but the state said, stay away from them. Don't touch them. They don't have to come to you. They don't have to ask for permission, and none of the neighbors know about it.
Yes.
We still can't touch any of that, no matter what we change here, correct?
RSA 674-54, agents of the state are not subject to local land use regulations.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, yeah, how does, is this how it was in Concord in the zoning, the land code?
No, I left in the middle of a code update, and there was talks about going in this direction. That code update did not proceed for various reasons. It kind of fizzled out.
Is this like this anywhere else?
There's 3
Yeah,
things.
roughly.
There are similar cases like this where it is simplified using these terms explicitly. Not necessarily. I found that these worked well for us, but I can send a list around.
Did this come from the consultants, or is this something you?
This is something we actually brainstormed together.
Okay.
They had worked in other locations where a general simplification. The problem with our code is it was mixing form and use in the same table, which like they had modular homes as a use. Modular homes is a building process, and, you know, it's not a use. So there was cleanup and simplification that had to happen, but then as we kept kind of pulling on it and we were understanding how the building types really govern the use, that led us down the path of being able to consolidate these uses into very clear and distinct, and also informed by the Fair Housing Act, you know, some clear lines where there's a clear shift in building function and in use and how that use materializes, and that's how we were able to draw these lines. So pulled on from examples in other communities, pulled on our own experience here in Nashua, and also just learning from our current code.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Just one,
Sure. Alderman Clark.
any of these changes that we're making, will any of them be affected by what Concord is doing with all their, that you know is in the
Probably
pipeline?
at some point.
Okay.
Later.
Okay.
Now. Who knows?
Yeah.
They're hitting us with all sorts
Oh,
of.
they are. They're
stuff,
just gutting our authority
Yes.
deeply up there. I know.
We keep a fine pulse on what is occurring up there, and there is some stuff that
It's rough.
they're throwing at us that we. July 1's going to be interesting.
I know.
And I will say that our current code is less prepared for some of the changes than what our new code is going to be. And
Good. Okay.
as much as we know that there are developers waiting for the new code, there's also developers who want to get projects in before we change, simply because they know what they know. But I also think there's a group of developers who are waiting for July 1 to occur and file under current code, and
I know of one.
I'm sure.
Thank you.
Anything else on residential
No.
uses? Okay. Thank you. Age-restricted housing. So this is something we have in our current code. We do offer a density bonus. I'm curious if that's something that we should still do. So in the table, we have some numbers. Base density factor is 1125. Inclusionary zoning is 850. If we go in the middle, we talked a little bit at our last meeting about sustainable development, so higher site performance criteria can earn you a slightly more advantageous density factor. Would it be appropriate to kind of put age-restricted housing in the middle there? Inclusionary zoning being the most expensive to do, therefore it earns the most advantageous density factor. I felt age-restricted housing, if that is something that we want to pursue, should kind of fall in between base and inclusionary zoning.
Alderman Clee.
Thank you. I'm going to be very honest here, and it's something I've said over and over again. I would like to try to do as much as we can to discourage age-restricted housing. And the reason for it is the more we build, that property can never be used unless everybody who owns a property within there changes their deed, because the deed is that, and it never can change over. When we talk about trying to get young people here and so on, I know up in Concord they were trying to create an age-restricted of like under 25 or under 30 or under 40 type thing, as well as the over 55. But the age-restricted means that that land, that property, will never ever be used for anything else. You would have to get every single person there to change their deed. I would like to do as much as we can to make it less by right, less beneficial, less, because I think when people want to build, they're, you know, and I know of a few people that use the by right to be able to do something of that nature. And I don't want to see our land being turned over that way. And don't get me wrong, I'm 65 years old. I'm a person who would fit into that home type thing. And someday I may end up being there, but I don't think it's good for the city for us to continue to encourage and to give bonuses and so on. We already do certain things, like the school tax and so on, that they get. I just don't think I don't think it's good for the city.
I don't love it either.
Yeah.
And that's
So-
just for building a house? That's not for like people that live in apartments, like, right?
Oh, it could be.
Like Nashua Housing, for instance, has places that, you know, like the Rel Manor, for instance, has places where, can we impact that at all, or is that
Oh, no,
federal,
No.
This is new development.
just new development?
Yeah.
No, but I mean, if National Housing wanted to build a place like that and have, you know, 55 and over and that's it, can we impact that? Or is
They-
that federal and we can't touch it?
They could do that, they just wouldn't get a
Density bonus, right, gotcha, okay.
Which is what I'm saying, is I would rather not, we can't change anything that's happened, I just don't want to encourage this. It
Yeah.
was, at one point, it might have been a good thing, but we have a lot of age-restricted within our city, and we're shooting ourselves in the foot. We're an aging community as it is. I don't want to see land get used for that. And they can put more in less space than we can, and they have the by right, the ability to do it, because the law, you know, because the land use says that they can do it and so on. So I just don't want to encourage it. I'd rather not have, density bonuses and so on.
I agree.
You know, I mean, that's going to be very controversial, but I'd like to stop encouraging it, you know. I don't know how my other colleagues feel about it.
I agree
but
with you. Anybody else?
We need more housing. I don't want to start carving it up for, I think everybody should live anywhere they want.
Mayor?
Okay.
And I 100% agree with exactly what you just said. By having the age restricted, we're limiting who can live there. And we're giving bonuses for them to build and be able to do closer. I don't mind, a density bonuses, but I don't want it to be age restricted. I'd like to discourage age-restricted housing, period. I think those communities are wonderful, and again, someday I may end up there, but I think people should be able to live wherever they can, but you can't live, if you're 40 years old, you can't live in one of those places. So that choice is taken away from you because we gave them that ability, so.
So without a density bonus, age-restricted housing would just be one of those three categories. It can materialize as just household living. It could also be group living in a more, they have some shared facilities in a multifamily sort of form. It can also be group living with care. So that's how that would then be regulated as a use in the new code. Well, I think I got very clear direction on that one. Thank you. And we can do as many of these as you want. I've got
How many more you got?
6, 7 more slides. We don't have to go through
How
all.
far you guys want to go tonight?
I'm here, so.
Let me get at least 2 more in, because I
Okay.
think there's 2. These next-
Sounds good.
Yeah,
These next 2 I think are.
2 sounds good, is right?
This one's really easy, I think. We brought this to the planning board, a landscaping payment in lieu. So sometimes people come to the planning board asking for a waiver of some landscape standards. We never support it. There are instances where that actually makes sense. Think of car dealerships, right? You have a lot of cars. Maybe you don't want leaves dropping on cars. Maybe it's hindering the visibility, which we know that car dealerships love visibility, very important for their business. So they need to meet all drainage and infiltration standards, but they have a vehicle now to get out of the required tree plantings, paying a premium at that into a fund, call it the Urban Tree Fund or whatever, that then could be deployed however we see fit. This is a program that we would need to stand up and figure out exactly how we use it. But these monies could then go towards putting trees in areas of the city where there aren't enough trees, say, very ironically, the tree streets, to help with heat island effects, stormwater mitigation, all those sorts of things. So this would be a way of finding funds, deploying funds in a more effective manner. And this would be through conditional use permit. You'd have to apply to the planning board as part of the site plan process to be able to do this. Concord had developed this, and they used it exactly for the car dealership. And it was effective.
The planning board did approve this. They felt that this was a good use.
Alderman Sullivan.
What are you talking about as far as what would a payment be?
Sure. So typically, we're basing this off of how we bond landscaping right now. So say you need a CO in October, well, you're not gonna go plant the landscaping until the spring. So we take a bond. We price that bond based off of, they have to provide us a planting list from a local nursery. So we know exactly, yes, you have access to all of these trees per your landscaping plan, and all of those have a price to them. And then we double it to cover cost of installation. Should they not perform, the city can then buy the tree and install it and not have to pay anything. So using that as this is how we would buy and plant a tree, to add the premium, we could 3x it, we could 4x it, something like that. Because then the context there is important in that, say we have a car dealership that has a lot of land, can very easily plant trees, and then the new context is the tree streets where you have sidewalk, you have all these utilities, and you would have to do structured soils and a silvocell. There's a lot more engineering and costs associated with that. By applying a greater multiple to that buyout, we can actually deliver a more effective tree situation where that tree would actually thrive and survive long term.
Yeah, Alderman Sullivan?
Oh, okay. So then the money goes into a tree fund. That looks a lot like a trust fund, which, we have the right to expend, we have I'm just thinking of the bureaucracy that would
Yes.
go into this, and,
That's fair.
all of a sudden, we have $50,000 in a tree fund, and we don't have any more trees. I mean, I like the idea. I'm just trying to think of how we implement the idea. We just manage so much. I just want to I understand what you're trying to do. I just want to make sure we do it.
So I did speak with Director Photo, Engineer Hudson, and the engineering department about something like this.
Okay.
And they saw the utility of it. Working out the details of how it would be administered, we've even thought about, neighborhoods could apply to the fund and say, hey, look, we'd really like a tree. Well, great, we have funds and we could very easily do that.
Yeah.
It's not like we're trying to, disperse $100,000 from the housing revolving fund. This is, maybe $1,000, $2,000 for.
I guess I just want to see how we do it.
And I think that the utilization of this would be very limited, but we want to have it as an option, because in most cases, we would want to see trees planted associated with site plans. This is really for those fringe cases where there really is a unique reason to request this in the first place, and then the planning board would have to grant that special permission. But then we have the mechanisms to be able to actually use that.
Okay.
Alderman Clee?
Yeah, we, to Alderman Sullivan's comments, we already have funds that are very similar to this, the sidewalk fund. So for instance, if someone is to build a home, we have a rule that says if there's no sidewalk across from your building, you have to put it in. But we're not going to force them to put it in when there's nothing to the left and nothing to the right. We wouldn't force them to do that. So they pay in lieu of for sidewalk, and it gets put into a sidewalk fund that is used to put sidewalks, maybe on new Searles or something like that eventually, or something to that nature. So our engineering department is already doing something very similar with the in lieu of payment for sidewalks. And they manage it and so on, and then they use those funds when they need to do that. And when we were in the planning board, one of the conversations which was already kind of mentioned, that it would be a great thing. For a while, the city did have a tree program, and I think they still do to some extent. So when they pick up a tree from, when they're doing some kind of, they don't usually kill the tree, people can apply for trees. If you go on the website, you can see that they're there. But this would be able to, and I know on Toll Street, they did do a project like that. People paid like $50, and through that entire beltway, they were planting trees and so on. So this would work even better. Maybe it would cost them $50, or maybe, if we had to put it in, it would cost whatever the cost of it putting it in. So I do think it's a good program. And the only thing that we could think of that it could be used for would be for car dealerships. That made a whole lot of sense. Grocery stores and things like that could still put trees in. There's no reason why they couldn't do it, but cars did make a lot of sense. I mean, they're out there cleaning those cars every time it snows, when it rains, when it does everything like that. So that kind of particular thing did make sense. But it doesn't stop them, if I'm not mistaken, from planting them on their outside. We're not forcing them to plant it in the middle, correct?
Right, and we would typically see the request for trees along the frontage, so that visual impact,
Right.
but then also like landscaped islands, in terms of
Right.
leaves on cars, snow plowing, all the associated maintenance obligations with a lot full of cars.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Last one. So, Technical Review Committee. This is a approach that is enshrined in statute that basically allows the planning board to delegate some site plan review and approval authority to a technical review committee, typically made up of staff, engineer, planner, fire, everyone who does this already. We have a technical review committee right now. It serves as in an advisory capacity to the planning board. We meet, actually we're meeting next Tuesday, a couple of weeks in advance of the planning board meeting. We generate comments, we discuss the plans that are coming before the planning board. We did mention this to the planning board at a previous meeting. They wanted to see some of those edge cases of where, and this really would only relate to stuff that just barely meets the threshold for site plan review. It exceeds administrative review authority, but it's not, a 100-unit multifamily. It's not a 20-unit multifamily. It's not a drive-through. It's the very small cases to relieve the planning board agenda. There are a number of times where I'm sure some of our planning board members are just like, wow, why is this coming before us? This would be used to handle those. The planning board wants to see some cases that had come before them and identified as like, this would be TRC eligible, this would be TRC eligible. One of the concerns that the planning board did rightly raise is that when a project goes through TRC, there is no public hearing,
Right.
there is no notice. All projects that would be approved by TRC would have to meet code explicitly. If they need relief of any kind, that is a waiver, conditional use permit, they have to go to planning board. So these would typically be very small, regulatorily easy, if that makes sense, projects that really don't require that discretionary review at the planning board level. So the question is this something that we would want the planning board to establish and delegate authority? Obviously, we need to set thresholds around this. So more of a conceptual conversation. And I've told you the planning board's thoughts on this.
Alderman Clee.
Thank you, and thank you for indulging me so much. But yeah, the planning board, we did ask for examples that would be brought to us that would show us. This would have been one of the cases, a case that's already come before the planning board, so that they could show us some of those things. I think we really do have to have some strict guidelines, but being on the planning board, I can say that there are times that things have come forward and we just kind of look at it going, yeah, this one's a no-brainer, this one's a yes. My only real concern that I have is exactly what was just stated. None of the neighbors get notified, but we're already kind of doing that now with ADUs. That's a by right now, and we're not notifying. The state said, this is a by right, they don't go in front of zoning, they don't go in front of anybody, so people can build these things. So it's already kind of happening within the city. I think it's going to take some people by surprise when something like this does happen. But I think as long as we have some really strict guidelines and we see some examples of what it would be, that I think, but I'd really like to get the planning board's input on that before even the Board of Aldermen weighs in on it. So. because they're the ones that are making the decision, and I'd hate to take any power away from them, but I think it's a good idea. It's just, there are some pitfalls.
Makes me a little nervous in
Yeah.
general, just because not having public hearings on some stuff, yeah, that makes me a little nervous. Alderman Sullivan?
So the Technical Review Committee is a subset of the planning board who watches the TRC. I mean, if they approve something that they shouldn't have, who watches them?
So.
Where's the check and balance,
Yeah.
is what I'm saying.
We would have a report attached to all of our planning board agendas of anything that the TRC had approved.
Okay.
So the planning board would be informed
Okay.
of any actions that the TRC takes.
Okay. Just to follow up on this,
Yeah, go
just to clarify, so now we have a TRC, it's advisory. So with anything, like when I was on the Conservation Commission, it wasn't a binding decision. It's basically, the way I always couched it was, you ask a friend for advice, you don't have to follow it, that they're just giving their opinion. So this is kind of how it's set up now. But this change would maybe put some, for lack of a better term, teeth to it.
Sure.
It would be binding?
It would be an approval. Yep.
Okay. Interesting.
It expedites the review process, to make the pros case for the developer side, it's more expeditious, but it's still the full staff review. Planning provides comments, engineering provides comments, fire provides comments, all of the staff, the technical staff that look at a site plan, ensure safety function and ensuring that it meets all of our regulations, that review process still occurs.
Yeah. Interesting.
Alderman Clee?
Thank you. Just to comment on that, the neighbors would not be notified and so on in this, but it would still become part of a record that the planning board would get and could review. I would hope that they have the ability to ask a question of it because it's part of their agenda and so on. Not that they can undo it, but to ask for justification of, what was the reasoning within those walls. I mean, that's what I would like to see. So whoever's on the planning board has that ability of saying, flag something and say, I think this went too far, and get a justification for it. But I do think that there are so many cases that come in front of the board that neighbors they never come to it. They don't type of thing. So, it would move the process. And right now, one of the things is, and correct me if I'm wrong, we have to put the sign out for X number of weeks, like 2 weeks or some 10 days, 2 weeks. It takes like almost a month just to get onto the planning board's committee. And then it's discussed, could potentially be tabled and so on. So and then once it gets tabled, more notifications have to go out and so on. So no? Okay, so it could just appear at the next meeting if the board tables it. But in any case, it could still currently could take 4 to 6 weeks just for something to be heard. Is that correct?
6 weeks.
6 weeks for something to be heard. What would be the time frame of a TRC? Because right now we get those staff reports, which help us immensely. I know it helps me ask my questions, but.
Yeah, I mean, so theoretically, we have a turnaround from application submission, and then TRC, I believe, is 2 or 3 weeks. It's potentially, we could have a decision at that TRC meeting if it's a simple enough case. Alternatively, there may be some follow-up. Interestingly, there are statutory timelines around how long a planning board has to take to act on a case. Those don't exist for TRC. I think with the general assumption that it would just move faster, but both the TRC and the applicant have the opportunity to say, you know what, this isn't working, we need to kick it to planning board. That's still a viable option. But we would hope if TRC was functioning the way that we would envision it under statute and in here, 2 to 3 weeks for an approval versus 6.
Okay, thank you.
So really no-brainers at this point, nothing that would be controversial or anything like that. These ones are probably going to get approved anyway, but we got to do our due diligence to make sure it fits all, and that's what the technical review committee and the staff and all that will look for.
Exactly. Yeah,
Okay.
if we take, my administrative authority of basically a 10% increase in building size or unit count, there's a whole bunch of stuff that kind of falls just above that. So if you have a 5-unit building and you're adding a unit, that's site plan. That's greater than 10%. I can't approve that.
Yeah.
It's those instances where it's like, okay, if you have all the parking on site, you're adding a unit, well, okay, you can just go to TRC. You don't need to go to full planning board. That's it.
So we don't have to worry about like vape shops getting put under the, falling outside of this and
We have
just
Yeah,
getting
we also
approved.
be very sensitive about what the application is.
Okay.
As I've done before, we've had applications that come in at administrative review and say, oh, I don't want to touch that. We're going to go to planning board with that.
I just don't want things to like, go through this committee and get signed, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, how did that get approved? And, oh, it went through the TRC, and I was like, oh, well, maybe it should have been, wasn't checked right or whatever. These should be no-brainers.
Right, and we, as staff, we don't have that authority, this would be kind of new for everyone. I think that generally in knowing the staff that we work with, we're all a little bit gun shy about that. We like having the buffer of the planning board. They have an incredible responsibility to make these decisions. I think, and working with the planning board of understanding where those thresholds are and, how we are sensitive around what we actually would be scoped with, that's a very key component to this.
Any other questions for Mr. Durfee? Well, thank you again for bringing this through. We'll continue to do this every month until we roll this thing out, or vote on it, I should say. So thank you.
Thank you.
Did I get your flash drive?
Email.
Did you see that?
Put it on the desktop, so we should be good for Donna.
Yeah.
All right, clerk.
Communications,
There's none.
petitions,
There's none.
unfinished business,
None.
new
Actually,
business.
I should be asking you that.
Yeah, the other way. There you go. I was like, okay, we can do it.
New business resolutions.
None,
New business ordinances.
none,
Table and committee.
none.
General discussion. Anyone for general discussion? I don't see anyone. Public comment, there's no one in the audience. Remarks by aldermen, anybody got anything they want to?
It was just a great meeting, thank you.
Yeah, no, I enjoyed the meeting in general, too. All right, we don't have Alderman Clemens here, so motion by Alderman Klee.
I motion to tape, motion to, was that motion to adjourn? I'm tired.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, and we are out of here at 9:26. So you can hit record, and that will turn.